Hey everybody, my name is Jonny Bradley. I'm joined here with a very special guest, and we're going to be talking about what they don't teach you as an entrepreneur, really talking about mental health. So what I'd like first of all is just to introduce yourself to everyone and give us a bit of a backstory as to who you are and how you became an entrepreneur and why you're an advocate for mental health and what these hoodies are that we're wearing today.
Well, my name is Matt and I'm actually part of the Seller Pro Academy. And that's how I met you. That's how I know you.
Yeah.
And thank you for inviting me here. It's lovely to be here and talk about important subjects like this. With regards to sort of attitude and self-development, I remember it quite vividly actually. Back in 2014 is when I first got switched on about mindset and attitude. And I noticed a good friend of mine was doing particularly well, successful. Mm-hmm. He had the car, the watch, but also he just seemed very happy. And I was going on holiday and I said to him, could you recommend a book or something that I can just, read while I'm away? And he got back in touch on the same day and I actually met him in Bromley. He gave me a book, and the book was Think and Grow Rich. I don't know if you've read it.
I've actually not.
You've not? I recommend it. I recommend it. Think and Grow Rich.
I may have listened to a bit of the audiobook. So,
yeah, it is a good one. It's a good one. And he wrote a nice little message on the front, which I'll remember.
I'm going to have to let the dog out.
It's going crazy. Let the dog out.
Yeah.
So yeah, and he gave me this book. I took it away, and I read it. I immersed myself in it. And it was really the sort of switching on point, and it made me really aware of how important mindset and attitude is.
Did you see kind of him being successful and then thinking, oh, it's because of this, like having that like penny drop moment? You're like, this is.
I noticed the changes in his kind of demeanor. He had an aura about him, and he was sharing things, which was great. And I just sensed that he was, something in him had changed. Mm-hmm. I took this book away, I read it, and I remember having almost like an epiphany moment while I was abroad. And I remember walking down this promenade and just feeling so at ease and just sort of knowing that what I had done in my past in terms of school and education, because I enjoyed art. I never wanted to be a painter, and I went down the design route. And then I went to study product and furniture design, and it all kind of like really just all the pieces of the puzzle fit. And I just kind of remember walking down the street thinking, this is my purpose. And that gave me a real sort of sense of relief almost. And I don't know, it just gave me a huge sense of faith that I was on the right track and that I actually knew where I was going.
Is it, so it was like you read the book and you're like, oh, this is the missing piece of the puzzle. This is what I was kind of needed, but you didn't know it until you read the book.
Yeah. It just almost like the decisions that I'd made throughout my school career, my school and my kind of educational career, they were subconsciously guiding me to this sort of place. And after reading the book, I kind of looked back at it from a higher perspective and thought, that's why. It was like an aha moment. Was
there any particular parts in there that like really struck a chord?
The whole book's great. I'd recommend reading it. I really would. There's a lot in there that talks about character and defines successful people. Just a quick backstory about the book. It was written in, I think it was 1915 or 1920. Okay. It's an old book. But the principles in it are still so relevant now as they were back then. And, the guy, he studied he lived with people like Henry Ford, real sort of tycoons of their time. And he studied their sort of habits. And he came up with this book. So that was when I was first sort of switched onto it back in 2014. Yeah. And then also... You
can't be doing this. It's the spare battery. The spare battery is just having it. That's going to happen a few times, that's everyone.
Fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Got no one to look after him, naughty little boy.
So yeah, he kind of got me onto that book. And then also another person who has been a key figure in terms of my own mindset is a guy called Jim Rohn.
Yeah.
And
I've heard of it. I think you've recommended it.
Yeah, I think I have. I bang on about him all the time. He's like, I would say... I would say Jim Rohn is like my sort of like long lost granddad. Like I see him as that, and he basically he sums it up really well in terms of attitude, and he describes it as the set of the sail. So if you imagine a boat, and your attitude is the sail, and he says he kind of describes it as, if you've got your sail fully up, you can make the most of the wind, and the same wind blows on all of us. But if your sail's not set, if it's slumped up, you're just going to meander. So that really kind of resonated with me, and I thought that was a really good metaphor as to how he described mindset and attitude, and I just thought that was a great one. I'd highly recommend his audio CD, The Art of Exceptional Living.
Nice.
That's a great one. I've probably listened to it about 50 times.
Nice.
And
a less, I guess, profound one is. Oh, come on, man. Like, this is not the time to be playing up. A less profound one, I saw like an interview with Tyson Fury, and he was saying, what's the difference between a rich man and a poor man? And, it is mindset. And he said, we're just two naked buns in a shower, like, at the end of the day. Like, we're all the same. Yeah. But the thing that does change us is our mindset and our perspective. And I think that leads us, I guess, really well onto, I guess, mindset within business, and particularly some of the negative effects that having and running a business can create, and equally jobs or commitments. And I think anything like running a business, or having a family, or having a job, having any sort of commitments or responsibilities, you often have the same sort of, I guess, issues, but of course they can be heightened when there's money involved, right?
Yeah. No, certainly.
Sleeps most of the day and then goes crazy. Cool. So let's talk about mentality.
Okay. Yeah. So I was asked back in April last year, just before the pandemic, by a very good friend to be a trustee in this mentality, which is it's basically a mental health support group. And there's a small team of us, all with different kind of skill sets, and some of us have overcome certain problems, and we're not kind of pitching ourselves as professional support. We want to be the sort of first port of call before that. We often do walks, like go for like one-on-one walks and talks just for an hour, and we just kind of try and be a listening ear for people who need it, because you don't always need professional help. Sometimes you just need a listening ear. Yeah. Right. we set this up, mentality, in 2020, April 2020, and it's gone from strength to strength. And like I said, it's like a local community now, and it's building. And we're just trying to help people that need it, all sorts of people as well. And my particular role, I see myself as someone who, thankfully, I've not had too much struggles in my life. I consider myself quite blessed for that, but I try and take this sort of self-development attitude aspect, and I try and elevate people. So where they've possibly been struggling, and they're, say, a -5, they've been brought up to be a 0, to be average. I consider my role in the sort of support group is to then lift them up higher and try and kind of elevate their mindset and their attitude. That's my sort of particular forte, I'd say. Yeah,
I think having someone at least you can reach out to, I think is really key. Like just the other week, right? I was extremely stressed and anxious about everything, right? It wasn't just business, it was literally just everything. And I speak with my partner, and that's nice, but this I don't maybe feel comfortable speaking to my family because I don't really know the ins and outs of what's going on. So I just spoke to a friend that's been through it, that that is an advocate for really speaking out and helping people from the mental side of things, and that really helped. Like that was it was a turning point where my mentality for a few days was just really not very good. And that conversation, although it didn't turn around that night, the next day I woke up and I felt a lot better, and had got a lot more done that day. Wasn't so anxious about when you wake up in the morning, like, oh my God, I've got all this work to do, like how am I going to get it done?
Sometimes
It's-
just getting it out helps.
Yeah, exactly.
Just getting it out of your
exactly.
head.
But I felt really nervous, right?
Okay.
Like messaging,
Yeah.
because it's a sign of like weakness, right? And
Can be seen to be, yeah.
it can be seen to be a sign of weakness, but in actual fact, it's really the opposite. It's a sign of strength, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, shall I send a message? Shall I do this? Shall I not? And I was like worrying about that, so adding to the worry.
Yeah.
And in the end, I sent a message, and he said, let's speak tomorrow. Give me a call. We spoke, half an hour, and it really turned it around. And it wasn't saying anything, that I didn't know already, right?
No.
But like you said, it's just speaking to someone and having a sounding board often helps you just think about what you're actually thinking and organize it. Like if you were to write a diary or something like that.
It helps you sort of order those thoughts, because sometimes in your head they're swirling and they're kind of all, it complicates things. It becomes very messy. But yeah, when you talk to someone, you have to, there's a process that happens. You have to logically put your thoughts into words, and that process makes you kind of order those thoughts
and think about what you actually mean.
Yeah. And just that process itself really helps. So yeah, I think that was a good shout to do that.
Yeah, well, good. Yeah, well, I'm here,
feel
so
better?
I feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I sent a message out to Silla Pro students to my Instagram, just to kind of figure out what struggles other people are going through, so we can kind of talk about it, see if we've had those experiences or can offer any advice. There's a few things that kept coming up, but there was something particularly that struck like a nerve with me, and that was the guilt of working, right?
Okay.
And it's so for me, this is what this is like. I'm very driven on the business side and have been for years, and it's in the past relationships it's had negative impacts, right? And that's because I've put more focus on the business, more focus on self-development than I have relationships. And I definitely still to this day have guilt about working, right? Right now it's Friday evening, this is work, right? Even though it's fun and I love doing it. But there's always going to be that guilt of, I should be spending time with my family. I should be spending time, doing something that's not work. And equally, when, let's say I have time off, a week off or whatever it's going to be, or even a day off, a weekend off, there's the guilt, I should be working. I need to be able to do something to provide. I need to be able to build so I can continue to provide into the future. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with when they're doing like a side hustle. And particularly with people around them, putting pressure on them to kind of like, don't forget about me. So is this something that you've kind of dealt with? It's
something that I'm going through, to be honest, because I've got a 9-to-5 job. I've got a side hustle. I've got 2 side hustles, actually. I've got 2 kids, and a wife. And at the moment, it's a struggle. It is. And unfortunately, like, I will be honest, like, my relationship with my wife, because of the kids and the work, is kind of, I'm losing time with her. But we talk about it. I think that's key as well. And she's very understanding, and they often say that behind a good man is a good woman, and she is that. And I kind of I try to paint a picture for the future as well, and I'm explaining to her that this is a short-term sacrifice, because my end goal is to be time rich and not have a 9-to-5 job.
So when the kids grow up and
I can be there more for them. I can be there more for her. And I do get a sense if in a week there's been 4 nights where I'm working or I'm doing something, that I know that I'm kind of withdrawing from that emotional bank account a little bit too much. So, and I will, make a conscious effort, because I value it, and I relationships are right up there in terms of my priority list. So yeah, it is a tricky one, and it is a battle, and you're never going to have the perfect balance. You're always going to fluctuate. That's with anything.
If you had stacks in the bank and house is paid for, then maybe it'd be great. But how did you get there, right?
But even if you've got that and you're set up, and you'll tend to focus on one thing more in one time, and then you'll fluctuate back
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just, as long as you're not on one end of the spectrum for too long, that it's detrimental and relationships break or business fails, you kind of have to go up and down the spectrum, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You're never going to be bang in the middle all the time. So you're going to have periods where you're working more, or you're with your home, with your kids or with your partner more. And I think, there are tricks that, in fact, I'm reading a good book at the minute, actually, about life leverage. And I think Paul recommended it to me. Paul Haynes, he's another Seller Pro guru. And the author of the book sort of has these little hacks, and he'll go to a business meeting abroad and he'll bring the kids and the family, and he'll specify that's one day where he's got to work. And then for the rest of the short while, he'll enjoy the family time. So he kind of mixes the two, which I think is a great idea. If you can make it work, then I think that's a good solution. But yeah, short term for me, I've been putting in a lot of hours, a lot of late nights, and you have to be in tune with your body as well. He's just eating the plants there. That would do.
What are you doing?
He wants to be involved.
He does want to be. He's so cute. You can't tell him off.
Yeah, I know.
Oh.
So you've just got to kind of, I think you just got to be in tune with it. That helps.
Understanding when you're seeing the signs from both angles, like I'm spending maybe I'm it's 10 o'clock at night and I've done this a few days in a row. Like maybe I should take a day off. But what about when you're getting that external pressure from, be it a family member, significant other, or your work, right? When I had my last job that I did, I was starting my Amazon business in the spare time. It got to a point where I was like, I don't want to put more effort into work because I want to put more effort into the business. And they could tell, because I started leaving on time, whereas before I was staying 2-3 hours after I was supposed to finish, so I could progress in the job. Conversations happen at that point. So if your significant other is saying, hey, look, you're really spending too much time on your business, and they're saying how they feel, right? I feel like I need more of your attention. How can we kind of approach that in a way where it's not going to escalate it?
You have to listen first and foremost, and I think if you don't listen, that's where things will start going wrong. So you have to listen to that outcry, and you have to sort of, there's a reason why they're saying that. That's how they feel. So you have to take it on board, and you have to, make changes. You have to sacrifice certain things, and you have to book the restaurant, go out for a meal, even just have a night off and sit at home and chill, cook.
Turn the phone off.
Turn the phone off. But communication is another very, very important skill. And I will go as far as saying that communication is one of the most important skills in life. And
is that much as not being able to physically communicate what you're saying, but listen to what is being communicated to you, and understand that everyone has their own agenda, right?
Empathise. You got to empathise.
Got to empathise. Yeah. But if someone's saying to you, "I feel like you're not spending enough time with me," then
which is what he's saying right now.
You've got to listen to him and. And say, look, I get it, I understand. Let's play later, maybe. Because I think that's when someone gets to that point where they're outcrying, I need you, right? Or it's the business screaming, I need you. There's when it's a physical person, obviously. It will come from a point of emotion, and it may not be put across in the most eloquent of ways.
Not, and
I think that's important when you have to realise that their perspective is real, and you'll be thinking, well, I want my business to succeed, I want my relationship to succeed, but there's going to be some compromises somewhere, and I think that's a hard conversation for people to have. Yeah,
it is. But I do believe, or I'm a firm believer of painting the picture as well, because if your partner can see what you're trying to achieve, then I think it makes it easier for them to understand that short-term sacrifice. Because like I say to my wife, that I'm doing this now so that in a year, 2 years time, I don't have to have a 9-to-5 job, and you won't get rid of me then, and it'll completely change. So I hope that I communicate that well enough that she understands, and that she is a little bit more forgiving sometimes when it needs it. But then also you have to, book the restaurant and go out.
You just got to make it a priority, basically.
But do you know what? Like already now, I'm starting to see the fruits of the Amazon business. Got a new car the other week, and that's actually my wife has that for the week to drop the kids off to school, and I'm getting a train up to work. How does that work? But it's nice to be able to just enjoy the fruits already, and it's in terms of business, it's we've not been going for 2 years, so it's very early. So it kind of it's starting to show. We're
and I guess once you can show that, it then becomes more real rather than you're putting all this time and you're reinvesting. It's like you're like, well, where's the payoff, right? And I guess that's when you have to have that. I mean, all parties involved really have to understand that vision and have that patience for the, great things normally take, a lot of effort and a good amount of time to happen,
they do.
right?
And I think sadly a lot of people give up just before things start to happen. Yeah, because it takes a couple of years, I'd say. If you want to do things properly, I do believe it. For things to really start compounding, it does take a bit of time.
Let's talk about that kind of doubt, because people normally maybe stop. Obviously, there's going to be other pressures that they might have, but one of the main things I think a lot of people said when I canvassed out is doubt and fear of failure, and how to work past that feeling of I'm not good enough to do this, right? I don't think it's going to work. What if this goes wrong? What if this doesn't play out the way I like it? And I think everyone has that. I can't. There's no one I've ever spoken to that says, well, I don't have a fear of failure. I don't have any doubt. So how do you work around that? Because it is a feeling. It's an anxiety, isn't it? It's a feeling of something going wrong, or a fear of failure.
Yeah, it is an anxiety, and I think with that is a consequence of looking to the future. And I feel sometimes you have to just concentrate on the daily tasks and not be too focused in the future, and encourage that worry and that anxiety.
So is that like fear? Was it false expectations appearing real?
Yeah.
And so this is something that I do quite often. Is I will, I have concerns about the future. Of course you do. Everyone does. But I focus on the next day, right? The next week, and try not to focus too far ahead, even though I know it's a good idea to plan further ahead. Yeah. But in terms of the day to day, it's, what am I doing tomorrow that's really, really important?
Yeah. And that's what's in your control as well. I think a lot of people waste time worrying about things that are out of their control.
Exactly. Well, let's get onto that now. I'm just going to reset the cameras, and we'll talk about that. Okay, cool. So we just spoke about external things that are kind of out of your control. Yeah. And that was another thing that was brought up, is having that anxiety and that fear of things that are outside of your control. And I've seen this a lot with COVID and Brexit recently. Especially around the e-commerce, the Amazon stuff. I got tons of messages like, is this going to work? Is this going to still happen? What about COVID? What about the Suez Canal? Like, what's going to happen? And when Amazon changed something, there's a lot of people kick up in the community saying, oh my God, what's going to happen? And ultimately it's a case of, it's out of your control. You just have to deal with it. And so how would you work through that?
It's certainly is a skill that I think the more you're exposed to it, the easier it becomes.
Well, like dealing with ambiguity and
and I'm sure there's a Royal Marines quote is be like at peace with uncertainty. When they're getting dropped into all sorts of predicaments, and they have to remain calm. And I think the more you're exposed to it, the easier it becomes to deal with. So at first it can seem quite overwhelming, and there's a lot going on. You're trying new things, but with time and experience, I think there comes a level-headedness.
Is there anything you can do then to try and craft that skill?
Well, it's exposure, I'd say, and also, as we said earlier, try not to think too much about the future, like the long-term future, with regards to things that can go wrong, because conversely, there's a lot of things that can go right.
Well, and this is the thing,
tend to focus on the negative. And I learned something recently, which I think is very true, and it's probably the reason why we tend to focus on the negative, is when you go back to caveman days, it's more important, or at that time it was more important to know if there was a lion in the cave. Because if you was to go in that cave, that's it. Whereas, a nice sunset or a morning is, it's a nicety, but it's not as memorable. And I think that as a kind of, as a human race, we tend to focus more on the negative. And I think you have to be clever, and you have to kind of look at yourself from an outward sort of standpoint, and you have to watch your thoughts. And you have to think, hang about, I'm focusing too much on the negative. Well, let's just try and kind of be a little bit more optimistic.
It's really interesting you said that, because I used to have a lot of anxiety with flying and even driving, right? And I love cars, right? And I love driving.
That's it.
And then one day it just it suddenly happened, right? I gradually got a lot of fear of overflying, and I really didn't like it. And then the same with I couldn't drive on the motorway. I was, looking back, I was probably having mild panic attacks, but I didn't really know at that time. You can chill out, can't you? Hey, what's going on?
He's showing off.
Go on then, you go. Go on. Okay, good boy. Yeah, and for quite a while, maybe a year or so, I was just removing myself from those situations.
Really?
Yeah. Other people would drive if we're going a long journey, and it got to the point where I was like, this is I can't keep doing this. I need to be able to get about. I want to be able to go on holidays without, getting to the airport and starting to just really feel uncomfortable. And all I did was I watched a few YouTube videos, and they said just picture yourself from the third perspective. So, picture yourself in the plane, but from someone else's perspective.
Okay. Yeah.
Picture yourself in the car and visualize the route that you're going to take from above, and just picture it forward, backwards, and just keep picturing it from the third perspective, from like a bird's eye view. And then once you're in the car, try and do the same thing. Picture yourself from someone else's perspective. And then it honestly, it disappeared very quickly. And, I think after I started doing that, I went on 10 flights within 3 months, and I bought my, C63. So I was like, right, now I'm over it. I'm ready to go.
Well, that's it.
I'm going to make up for lost time. And it was just the ability to take a step out and go, okay, let's get some perspective about, what's actually important and what's really going to happen. And I think the same thing happens with decisions you make in your business or in your personal life. It's very easy to give someone else advice, right? Like especially with relationships, you see what's going on. You're like, you need to do this. You need to break up. Yeah. But when you're in it, you don't see it.
No,
right? It's so incredibly hard to see what the resolution
so much
is.
Emotion is,
it clouds everything.
Does, it really does cloud it. Yeah, and I think having that ability to step back from your own thoughts is actually very powerful. Yeah, and that's something that I've been kind of concentrating more the last sort of 3-4 years. And I've always been quite at peace and relaxed, but having that extra sort of tool to be able to look at myself or look at my thoughts and realize actually my thoughts, that's not necessarily like me, like that, the thoughts can be pushed on you in some way, shape or form. Just realizing external influence and just getting that higher perspective, I think is very important. And like you said, helped you. So he's the star of the show.
He is. You can't buy nice stuff. What are you doing, man? I'll just take everything away from you. It's because you're here. He's like, he's showing off. He's showing off.
Yeah.
And I think because we all get like intrusive thoughts, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard, especially if you're having a bit of a bad time and you start having intrusive thoughts, however bad they may be, to realize that that it's just a thought, right? And it can change. And by speaking to people and by realizing your thought process and maybe some of the logic and the emotions that you're going through, you can then understand your thought process and when things come into your mind, you can hopefully stick them back out again.
Understanding, I think, is a key word as well, and that helps me a lot. When I understand things, it makes a lot more. When things make a lot more sense to me, I'm a lot more ease. When something doesn't make sense or I don't understand it, I feel the need to explore it more. So understanding, I think, is an important thing.
Nice.
Like, I'm always searching. I'm always looking for answers for things, for problems, and they might not necessarily be right. But if I feel like I'm getting answers,
yeah, could you sometimes get into a trap of overthinking?
Yeah, sometimes you could. Yeah, that you could end up in a rabbit hole, couldn't you? But again, that's when you need to sort of check yourself and just think, hang about, I'm spending too much time overthinking it. So again, you have to just look at yourself from that sort of third person. But yeah, understanding, I think, is a key thing. Yeah.
What about, like, another thing that came up a few times was comparing, right? Do you find, I mean, the story you said at the beginning, really, you were making a comparison between yourself and your friend, right? Your friend has this, awesome, cool mindset, and at the time, maybe you wanted that, right? And you made that comparison, you made it happen.
Because that's the important part of the furniture.
I wish everyone could see what's going on outside. It's just any part of the furniture is just being ripped up and thrown around the garden. Let me go get it. A comparison can be a great thing, right? I think, because it might give you aspirations.
Yep.
It might give you some realizations about yourself. But I think it can be very, very detrimental. And particularly looking at other people ahead of you, behind you, and then thinking that actually makes a difference on your life, right?
How it makes a difference depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
So for me, it's easy to fall into that trap, isn't it? But for me, if I see someone who looks to be doing well or is successful, I don't get jealous. I actually, in my head, say, like, well done, I'm happy for you. And I think having that mindset changes the detrimental effects of comparing.
Because I would say that a lot of people will resent success, right?
Yeah.
And I've seen this, I have a friend and he said he's always had it in the past where he's had more success than his close friend group, and they ended up kind of resenting him for it. And maybe not verbally resenting it, but showing signs that actually, I mean, maybe he wasn't approaching it very well, but I think sometimes that can happen quite a lot where there is a level of resentment.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that stems from people being envious. I think envy and jealousy is a horrible trait, and yeah, I think if you can see someone that's doing well and is doing good, then and you can be happy for them, I think that negates any animosity, and I think that's a
how
real
can you
important
practice that gratitude like on a daily basis so that it becomes a habit?
There's gratitude practices, and it's just again a case of taking a few minutes to be thankful for things, but again you have to watch your thoughts, and I'll come back to that because you have to make a conscious effort. And we all have this subconscious program that's going on in our heads, and it starts from when we're 3 years old. And you can actually change it. It's difficult, and it takes up to 2 months to change a habit. But you can just start practicing it daily, and it does change your mindset. It does. And I've tried to make a conscious effort to do it. And whereas when I was in my early 20s, I was always chasing success, chasing money. I never really knew where it was going to come from. Weirdly, though, I always said to myself, I never want to retire and live off a state pension. Yeah. And I don't know why, but I always remember having that mindset.
Was that like maybe parents or something?
I don't know. I don't know. I've always had it in my head. I'm not going to retire and live off a state pension. Yeah. And I don't know who planted that seed in my head. I don't know when I made it up, but I was
subconsciously. How did your parents have a state pension, or anyone in your family members? And
yeah, I don't know where it came from, but it's always been in my head. And I would say that's probably been my biggest fear in my teens and in my early 20s is where that's going to come from. How am I going to get ahead? Because I done well, and I got married when I was fairly young. We bought property in South East London, which was difficult. We sacrificed, but I never really got ahead where I wanted to be, up until the last sort of, 3-4 years, I'd say, when I actually completely changed my mindset. And I just think that having that change, that shift really kind of made me feel at ease. But
it's hard. There might be people watching, listening, that
hopefully there's people.
Maybe.
They're probably watching the dog more than us.
To be honest, potentially more interesting. We can only apologise. Don't
funny.
work with kids or animals, right? No, but I think before I had a very similar realisation to you, in very similar circumstances. So I was on holiday, and I was reading books,
remember, yeah,
right?
Yep.
And I had that literally. I actually can remember it as well, when I had that moment when I was like,
powerful.
It is really powerful, because I can vividly remember, and the feeling of it as well.
Yeah.
Of thinking like, just thinking, I'm going to change now, and there's a visible decision to change and do things differently, and do things that scare me, and do things that a lot of people wouldn't do, because I had that realization of if I want the things that I want, and I want the life that I want, I have to do things that I'm not comfortable to do right now.
Yeah.
I have to get out of my job. I have to put in the extra hours. I have to be able to sacrifice a lot, right? And, I called up a friend, and they didn't believe me, right? And I told them this, and they didn't tell me at the time, right? I said, I'm going to do this. Hey, shut up. I'm going to do this. I feel like motivated. And obviously on the other end of the phone, they're like, right, sure, yeah. Okay, cool, whatever. And I did it. Like 2 months later, quit my job. And like, looking back, he said, I didn't actually believe you. But like, I can remember how emotional you were on the phone. And those moments are so profound. If someone's maybe not had that moment, do you think there's anything they can do to kind of have that realization? Because it's not just reading a book, it's not just writing affirmations. I think there's something bigger that has
like
to
a fundamental shift.
Literally a shift. Yeah.
They say there's 2 reasons why we change. It's either inspiration or desperation.
Okay, so I feel like I was in desperation.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that's probably most common.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that's a powerful moment when you're on your knees and you say, I've had it.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the most common. I would say, thankfully, that I was inspired. And it took me a sort of a gentle nudge from reading a book and kind of everything fitting together. But yeah, they say that's the two kind of most common reasons.
I think I see that the most, from what I do on a day-to-day basis. I think a lot of the times, I have people coming to me, in that desperation. I want to get out of. I want to do something different. But then equally, we have a lot of people that have the aspirations. Oh, I want to have this like lovely life, and I want to have. Maybe they're obviously 2 sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just realizing what it is for you, right? Because for me, it was just getting to the point where I just really did not like what I was doing on a day-to-day basis. And I think a ton of people have that feeling of dreading going into work.
Yeah, which
like,
is a shame.
Just hate it, just really hating it.
It's a shame when you think about it, and what people work to live. Why? We're here on this planet. Why are we spending most of our lives working a job that we hate? I'm fortunate again that I don't hate my 9-to-5 job, so it's almost a bit more difficult for me to give it up. But what I've become to hate is how much time I'm wasting there now.
Right. So now your focus is on okay, it's really about giving yourself more time.
Yeah.
Freedom.
Yeah. It's the whole reason why I set up the sort of Amazon business. With a partner as well, who I respect highly, and also that's helped with time as well, course, having two minds, and we've worked really well together, which might also be why it's seemed a bit easier, because having to do it all on your own by yourself would be a lot more difficult. And I know a lot of people in the Seller Pro Academy, they're doing it by themselves. And
I think loneliness in business is quite big, and this is actually one of the conversations I had last week. One of the things that came up in this conversation was about, the solo entrepreneur, that running a business can be incredibly lonely.
Yeah.
Because there's no one else to share that burden.
And especially worse this last year as well.
Yeah,
when you can't actually get out.
Yeah, and a lot of people's businesses doing badly, having issues, like lots of pillows getting eaten.
Yeah.
It's my fault for leaving them there.
That's what you want your house to look nice.
I know. I've got to do the pillow. Got to do the pillow arrangement, but tough.
It is a struggle. It is, but you've got to get yourself out there. You've got to realise, okay, I'm doing this all on my own. How can I get myself out there? How can I network? Network's so important. Networking.
I remember hearing, network is your net worth. Tons and tons and tons and tons of times, and I actually didn't believe it. I genuinely didn't believe it until I then realised, oh my God, this is the thing. This is the most important thing. The relationships is the most important thing.
Key.
And like building relationship assets, you've got to think of it like, you're building an asset. A relationship is an asset, and it pays you dividends. Maybe feelings, maybe in gratitude. Or,
sometimes it's unquantifiable.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah,
it is. And they say as well that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
So if you choose to spend your time with people who are, aspirational, then you're going to be the same, that way inclined.
It's hard though, isn't it? Like, it is hard when you see people that are maybe aspirational and you're not at that level, right? You're doing that comparison.
Yeah.
It's still, you have that moment, that feeling of I'm an outsider, right? I'm an imposter. Like, these people are trying to help me, or they're my friends, or they're my business colleagues, or whatever they're going to be. But if you're doing better than them or worse than them, you still have that feeling of not together. And I think it's hard to cultivate those relationships, but I think it's so important to do so. Yeah, and I really think the way to do that is just being as humble as possible, and really just thinking, if someone wants help, what can you do? If someone wants to chat, listen. If if there's any way that you can help, and even I know a lot of people get a little bit butthurt when you help someone and then they don't reciprocate, or they do something negative towards you, right? And they think, I shouldn't have done that. I'm not going to do that in the future. When in actual fact, I think if you give or have that empathy with no expectation of return, that's a lot better way to live your life, because you're going to get let down. And if
you're not putting the pressure on yourself, are you? Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, and something actually about being humble, something that I always remind myself of is that you can learn something from anyone, from everyone. There's, and I truly believe that is you can learn something from anyone, and I think that keeps me humble as well, because I'd hate to be seen to be looking down on anyone. And
if you're flippant and you're like, I'm not. Yeah. I don't need to do that. But actual fact, that relationship, that conversation could have led to something incredible, but you never gave it the chance, right? Of course, there's going to be limits. You're not going to be doing your shopping and have an hour conversation with someone at the pasta. But you can wear a smile on your face. Yeah. And be open to things. But obviously if you've got stuff to do, you can't be chatting. You can't be chatting to everyone. You won't get anything done. What about financial pressures? I think this is maybe a good thing to end on. Is talking about we got time. Talking about financial pressures, because I feel this is probably a predecessor to every other thing that happens. Yeah. Right? The whole reason we go get a job is for finance. The whole reason we start a business is for maybe time, but really finance. Yeah. Everything revolves around money. Absolutely everything. Yeah. So how is best to manage that? I have a coping technique myself.
Okay. Right? Be interested to hear. Yeah.
Because I know the way that I operate, right? And I'll give you an example of this. My tax bill, right? Got to pay VAT every 3 months. I feel sick. I feel actually sick, like in my stomach, when I have to pay it, and I put it off until the very, very last day. and I know I shouldn't do that.
It's hard to swallow.
It's extremely hard to swallow because, I mean, yeah, it can be a lot of money sometimes, and that's a financial pressure. So I just don't look at it. My bookkeeper, my accountant sends me, how much I have to pay. I don't even open it until the last day because I know that I'm not going to enjoy doing it, right? Or like Amazon sales, right? So many people I tell delete the app because otherwise you're looking at it in the morning and that can dictate the success of your day and your feeling of your day. Equally at the end, if it's not been a good day, it happens.
And that, just touching on what we said previously, that can affect your relationships.
It affects
if you have a bad morning,
100%.
You've not got time for your kids. You've not got time because you're conscious. Why is it going wrong? So
and that's a good point. And at that point it's too late. Right, it's too late to make a change for the present. You can only really make a change for the future. Or
can I just say as well though, but that's focusing on the negative as well, because sometimes you'll look and it'll be a great day, and like I've had it more often than not. It's a good day, and I'm happier because of it.
Exactly.
There's two different ends of the spectrum.
Ways, and then equally, I sometimes find when things are going well, and I find this with quite a few of my friends and stuff like that. When things are going well, you let your foot off the gas. You spend more time with your family, doing activities. You think, everything's going great, but then from the lack of maybe putting more time into the business in a 2 months time, you might get the downside to that. So sometimes a constant battle between like yin and yang of when you're doing well, you're feeling great. When you're going bad, you feel bad. And I think that's completely natural, and that's always going to happen.
With that, you have to be comfortable with that.
I think so, and especially when it's bad, the more business always goes up and down, and the more that it's down, the more I really realize that it doesn't actually matter because everything can change. Literally within one decision, the whole thing can change. And I've seen that with other people. I've seen it with myself. You make one decision, you decide rather than feeling sorry for yourself to turn that passion, like that desperation, into action, and you make something happen and you make a change. That may not play out, but I think the character side of what you're doing is an incredibly important skill for you to like build upon, right? When you're feeling down, is to continue to try and look towards the future, look towards the positive,
with anticipation as well. Look to the future with anticipation, excitement, what you can achieve, what can be done.
It's like, obviously, like people talk about the law of attraction and things like that, and like I think a lot of people go way too far with it, where they're like, just think about it, and it's gonna come out of thin air. Obviously that doesn't happen. I saw a Tony Robbins clip, right, and it kind of just put it into perspective for me, and I think this is the way I look at it. And he goes, get everyone to, I don't know exactly what he said, but he's like, look around the room and count how many things are brown. Gives everyone like 10 seconds. All right, okay, cool. And then ask people, rather than say, okay, how many brown things did you count, or green, whatever I said, he said, how many were red? And they're like, well, I don't know, because we were looking at something else. And I think that's really the point. If you're focusing on the positive, then you're more likely to find it. If you focus on the negative, you're more likely to find it.
Well, it's intention, isn't it? It's setting your intention. And my business partner recently bought me a Daruma doll. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. I think it's Chinese or Japanese. And it's basically this little character. And it's red and it's gold. And it's quite kind of a visual statement. And you set a goal and you colour in one of the eyes. And it works in that same principle. I've got it by my bed. So when I look at it, and you have to keep the goal to yourself. When I look at it, I'm reminded of that goal. And it's keeping the goal or your intention in the forefront of your mind. And you're always there then looking for how you can achieve it. Because I think it's easy to lose sight of things. And I think that's how the law of attraction works. Because it's a goal that you have, it's an intention that you have, and it's in the forefront of your mind. So you're looking for opportunities.
Life gets in the way, right? It's very easy. If you didn't have that physical object, it's very easy for things for life to get in the way. And I think that happens so often with people. They have a goal and they gradually lose sight of that goal as it gets further towards the horizon.
Do you know what they call that?
Go on.
The law of diminishing intent.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So the less you think about something, the less likely you're going to do it. And that's why they say strike while the iron is hot.
Nice.
Strike while that thought is in your mind. Take action straight away. Otherwise, the law of diminishing intent will take a hold.
I really like that. And I guess that does actually go into the science of what's going on in your brains, of the pathways. The more you think about something, you know why it takes like 2 months for a habit to form.
Yep.
It's because your brain is literally changing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's changing the neural pathways so that if you do the same thing every single morning and you change it, then eventually the path will change so that when you get up in the morning, you'll naturally want to do that thing.
It's like when you see pathways in the countryside, and it's worn and it's eroded because people have walked down it so many times. That's what happens with your thoughts in your subconscious mind. They become so entrenched, and to set a new path takes a while.
You got to get your machete out.
You got to get
that down.
You have, You got, it takes work. It does, but it can be done. It can be done.
And that's for the positive and negative as well.
Yeah.
Like that path toward that new path can equally be negative as well as positive, right? And I think more often than not, it's easier to carve down a negative path, right?
You can do. But I choose to look at it with a bit more optimism.
Yeah.
And I will kind of say, okay, I'm choosing to make this change for a reason. I've realized that what I've been doing in the past is not helping me. I'm going to make a conscious effort to change what I'm doing, to change my habit, because I know by changing that habit, I will get to a better place. I will, reach my goals. I will change my health practices. I will become, more skilled at communicating. I'll have better relationships. And I think that as well breeds self-esteem, faith as well. Having faith, someone mentioned it, I know, on the group, about kind of, self-belief and whatnot. And everything affects everything. Yeah. It really does.
So on that kind of faith, what do you define as faith then?
So faith for me, I believe, is, and I think there's quite an attachment to religion with faith, and rightly so, because religion uses faith quite powerfully. But I'm not religious. I wouldn't say I'm a Christian. I believe in higher power, or it's easy to call it God. I believe there is something above us that's there, higher power, I call it. So faith for me is believing in things not yet seen. Okay. So it's completely different to science, where it's going on results and whatnot. So for me, faith is believing in things that not yet seen. Nice. That's the essence of it for me.
And faith in yourself, how does that translate?
That's a good question. I think
is that, I guess, if it's about your future self.
Yeah.
God,
you got a wolf in there.
You just learn how to speak.
I think that comes from being confident in it. I think knowledge helps that. Again, reading for me has been a game changer, and learning and upskilling. I think a lot of people stop education when they leave school or leave university. They don't pick up books, and I think that's a downfall for a lot of people. So for me, having that kind of knowledge and being someone who reads gives me that self-confidence and that self-belief and that faith, because when you read like autobiographies or when you read self-development books, there's so many case studies that it can't be fake. Going on the visualization kind of thing and the Daruma doll. Here's something that this is my kind of my forte. This is what I was talking about earlier, my purpose and my passion. Yeah. And this is my kind of, it's been on the back burner.
Can I open it now?
Go for it. Yeah, open it. Yes. So it's been on the back burner for a while.
Oh, it's the wrong way around.
I didn't want to write on the front of it.
I'll turn it around once it's up.
Yeah. So this is going along that same principle, whereby having an affirmation or a reminder, a daily visual, keeps it in the forefront of your mind.
Okay, I love this.
So I've done a little artwork for you.
So I create immense value helping others achieve financial freedom. Incredible. Thank you so much for that, man.
And I've had that at home for about a year.
You got good use out of it.
This was the perfect time to give it to you.
Yeah, that's
and
amazing.
I remember we kind of done a little collab on it a while back. Yeah. But in essence, that's it's just a reminder of why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's almost like a little mission statement. And I just think there's power in that, and having that constant visual where you'll maybe look at that if you hang it. That is.
I am going to. Yeah, I'm going to put that somewhere where I see it every single day.
Because it's just a reminder of you doing what you do, and helping others. I think that's another fundamental thing for living a fulfilled life. I think
I think so. I think that's one of the most important things I've done. Making money's great, but at the end of the day, it ends up just sometimes being numbers, right?
Yeah.
And stresses.
Big numbers, which are good. Sometimes big numbers.
But pros and cons.
Yeah.
But the main thing is like when, like yourself, getting the 100K Club Awards, that brings me fulfillment, right? And seeing people progress, and in whatever it may be that they do, and like even just watching a video on YouTube, and sometimes I get a message or a direct message or an Instagram message saying how it's helped them. That brings
stuff.
Fulfillment. That does. And I've taught for the best part of 10 years now, because I started teaching guitar.
Yep.
And to kids, and then I remember when I realised how powerful it was, right? And it was a young girl I used to teach. Oh, get out! Come on! I was teaching guitar because I got not fired, but I was like Christmas temp at a job, and they didn't take me on. I was like, oh God, I need some money. So I started teaching guitar and teaching some like young kids, some adults, and there was one moment where the kid came in for her lesson. And she said, all my friends are jealous of like my guitar lessons because I can learn how to play any song. Because the way I taught her was to teach herself, right?
Yeah.
Rather than just learn what we're doing in class. Let me teach you how you teach yourself. So when you hear a song, you can find the chords and you can then play that, and you can, show off. And like she was really happy, and I was really happy, and I was like that stayed with me since I was, for the last 9 years, and I still remember that situation. And I think that's really, really, really impactful for your own self-development and your own how you grow as a person. I think as you get older and you mature, a lot of people get this earlier on in life, maybe. But I think once you get a certain level of maturity, you start to really realise how impactful those conversations and those moments are. And they're I think, what guide you in your life is those moments where you're like, I feel good about that situation. I feel like I've done a good thing. And those can be small things when you're at the shops and like you let someone in line that just has one item, right? Like it's just little things like that.
Little acts of service and kindness. Yeah, no, massively. Yeah, and do you think that's that one particular moment kind of guided you down to the Cellar Pro kind of route? You think that when you realise the power of that sort of, helping others and that act of service? Because
I remember it, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't. There was lots of lessons that I've forgotten completely, and most of the lessons that I taught her, I don't remember. Right? I was at uni. I was drinking most of the time. I don't remember most of the things, and I taught other students. I don't remember a lot of those interactions, but I do remember that because it made a difference in their life, and I then was like, okay, I understand my impact and how my impact can be quite big. What's going to happen after a few years with that person?
It's like a ripple effect as well, isn't it? Because if you share something or you help someone, then they can then help and share the same thing with others as well.
Exactly.
And you imagine that kind of or that butterfly effect of that. It's so powerful. And on that note, like honestly, you've given me and Michael like the tools to be able to sort of build financial freedom, and that's a little sort of token.
Yeah, thank you.
A little thank you, because it is a game changer completely. It is a game changer.
Yeah, man. So. But like this is the thing, and this is why it always comes back to you, right? Like I had the tools at the time, and maybe my advert played, or whatever it may have been, but you still had to be in that position to listen, right, and be open to the opportunity. And I like. I've got tons of these examples in my own life where people were telling me things and I wasn't listening. And then suddenly one day I listened to the advice that they were giving me for years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why didn't I listen? But like, you listened, but you didn't action it. And like, why didn't I do that before? Like, and I sometimes I think that comes down to ego.
Yep.
And
thinking
conversation,
you know best, or
I mean, just thinking, I'm doing well, I don't, whatever. And the conversation I had about a month or two ago, I was on a little mastermind call, with some really cool people, and ego came up, and I can't remember the exact words, but there's like business owner 1 and business owner 2.0, right? And a lot of the time when you start a business, it's about me. Right. Mm-hmm. I need to achieve something. I need to get somewhere. I need to, get that level of financial freedom or time freedom. But then there comes 2.0 when you realize that it's all about other people and it's really not about you. And it all becomes about drop the ego. You don't have competition. Because I always used to think I have competition, right? There's competition everywhere. But my 2.0 mentality. I'm probably at 1.7. Yeah, I'm at 1.7 maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of realizing there is no competition. Everyone's just doing their own thing. Mm-hmm. Everyone's making their own decisions. Everyone has their own lives. There is no competition. It's just people doing things. And I think once you realize that, it helps your own mindset of not worrying so much about what other people are doing, not worrying so much about
do you
what
mean
you're
like
doing.
looking over your shoulder almost?
Yeah, looking over your shoulder, but also looking at people that are more successful than you and thinking, what are they doing differently? But in actual fact, it's like let's just do you, and not worry so much about other people, because if you cultivate the right relationships, it's going to guide you down the path that you want to go, which may be completely different to where your ego is telling you to go.
Yeah,
and I think it's incredibly hard to try and drop the ego.
Ego is very detrimental in my opinion, and you know what? A lot of people even grow old not realizing what's their ego and what's their true self because of what's been impressioned on them or imprinted on them. It's fascinating once you realize actually I've got an ego. Everyone's got an ego.
Yeah.
And I've got my sort of true self. And again, going back to what I was saying about watching your thoughts, sieving out your egotistical thoughts and sieving out your true self thoughts is important. And like you said, if you stick to your true self, it's often in your gut, your intuition as well, then that guides you, that guides you down to a path of value, of a job which is your purpose, which you don't need to retire from. I don't want to ever have to retire. I hate the word retirement. I think it's backwards. Like I want to continue doing things I enjoy, and I think if you listen to your true self, what you enjoy, your passion, and you try and kind of create that into something which can provide financially as well, I think you're going to live a very fulfilled life, right? And I really do. And so I do think the ego is, almost like the devil in some respects. It really is. You
need ego to a certain extent, but I think you put it really well. It's learning how to listen to yourself. Yeah. And I think that's really hard to do, especially when there's so many things going on around you. So what, is there something that people can do to really, is it just meditate, turn off distractions, or just really think about your situations? What's your situation?
Yeah,
how do you check your ego, right? I think it's really hard. I needed someone to tell me, right? And I've had this in the past as well, where when I was working at Apple, I had one of my managers tell me that I'm arrogant, and I didn't feel arrogant at all.
I would imagine that wasn't a nice thing to hear as well. No one wants to come across arrogant.
And
I hope I don't come across arrogant.
It wasn't nice, no. Yeah. And, I took that feedback on board, and I took it quite I mean, I didn't take it badly, but I didn't take it well as well. Yeah. But I thought, why are people perceiving me as arrogant? Because I don't feel arrogant.
It made you want to understand.
Exactly. I wanted to understand what I was doing that gave the impression of doing that. And sometimes it was answering questions too quickly, or it was
not letting people
other people
sentences. Yeah.
And I still do it, right? But I'm much more in tune with when I need to shut up, right? Because someone had the confidence to actually tell me
Yep.
You know, this is how
I
you're
think
coming
you are,
across, right? And that I could very easily have gone the other way with the ego side of things and go, do you know what? I don't need to listen to you.
Yeah.
Like,
Who
what's
are
one
you?
person's opinion?
Yeah, who are you?
And,
Yeah.
and online that can be very hard, right? And this is why I think this is the kind of point I was trying to get to is when you're online and you have loads of people on social media and you have all these distractions, all it takes is one person to, when you say something you don't like and the ego kicks in, and that can really, you know, set you back and ruin things for you.
It must be actually, while we're talking about it, thinking like, you know, you probably do get, and I know you share some of your comments with your ads, and people write some quite funny things, but you know, I imagine sometimes you can take things like that personally.
Oh man, I get people saying like,
is tough to take.
I hope you die.
Yeah.
Like I mean, really horrible stuff. Like, I just literally, who cares? But
you have to look at it as just a reflection of themselves. You know, you can't take it, you know, to heart, but it's still not nice to hear those things and being directed at you, because fundamentally you are trying to help people, and it's not your fault if they don't see it that way.
Yeah, but one side, from my perspective, obviously I'm going, you know, I want to help people, also want to get paid as well, but I put a lot of content out for free. I want to help people. From their perspective, I'm not. Right, and then they get triggered to write a comment, and they could very easily get into an argument of I'm trying to do this, and ultimately just not listening to each other. I don't get into those arguments because it's not worth it. Yeah. But every now and again I do get a funny one, and I'm like, all right, fair play. Yeah. That's quite good. Yeah. You know, I would implore people to rip me on social
gives you a
media.
Bit of content, doesn't
it does, yeah. I tell you what, the most replies I get on my stories are when
do you
people
know
are
what though? Me. Like, that's an important thing as well. You've got to be able to laugh at yourself.
Yeah.
And I think some people take themselves too seriously. And like recently, like I play golf, and we were talking about this on the golf course at the weekend, and is that, you know, it's a psychological game. And you can't take yourself too seriously, because you hit a bad shot, and if you get frustrated and you let it get to you, then your next shot's going to be just as bad. Exactly. And it's going to continue that downward spiral. And you have to be able to sort of be a little bit lighthearted and sometimes laugh it off and just brush it off. And then, you know, and then you're good to go next shot. And yeah, it is sort of psychological, and that's a good psychological tool actually. Yeah. But you do notice that some people are so kind of like pent up and serious all the time. And
well, I was speaking the other day with my girlfriend, and you know, she was looking at Twitter comments about just a Twitter thread. I'm like, who are these people? Like really kicking off at each other? Like what? Like, and are they doing it for fun? I kind of didn't understand the perspective, and I was like, are they doing it for fun, which is cool, or is it are they genuinely being serious? Yeah. In which case, like, what's going on? And
it's hard to read as well online, because you can't
hear what the tone or anything like that.
Or watch their physiology. You can't sense it.
Yeah, and like one of her friends was then chiming in, and I'm like, are they and pissed off? Are they annoyed? I'm like, just like chill. This doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make an impact. I think social media is so incredibly bad for that stuff, and social media, I believe, has incredible benefits. I really think it does. But on the other side of it, it has massively detrimental impacts as well. And I think one of the things that I've realised, you know, from running ads on Facebook particularly and getting a lot of hate, like the one thing I've realised is just like really just ignore it. Like just ignore it. There's no point giving it any moment of thought.
And that's almost where you could say ignorance is bliss.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily tend to agree with that statement, but sometimes it is.
When you know the backstory, when you know what's going on, I think that it is. Like for example, I don't have access to that anymore. I don't even see them. Right? Okay. Other than if it comes up on my feed, I actually don't. I don't get a notification. You know, I don't see it. So in that sense, ignorance is bliss. Because sometimes someone might say something, I'm like, come on, I might be in a bad mood, or you know,
it might be personal. It might say personal.
Like, look at that bonnet.
You don't need to go there.
They'll be like, Johnny, you put on some weight since last year. And I'm like, come on, man, chill. I know.
Saying that, you got a dozen Krispy Kremes over there.
I know. Well, they are going to get eaten as well, so you're going to have to help me out with them.
I will do. Yeah.
I think let's call it a day there. Yeah. Thank you, Matt, for coming and
thank you
and chatting. I think it's been really good. Hopefully it's brought a lot of value to people watching and some context around.
Also, I'd be
mindset.
happy to, answer comments and,
I would
give them
also say follow Mentality Group. It's _, Mentality Group. Is that right?
So we're on Facebook and we are also on Instagram. Come and check us out and see. We're a listening ear. If you want to reach out to us, then feel free.
Yeah, I think you're very knowledgeable and you're very clearly very passionate about this as well. So you're going to be in good hands. And you've been through this as well. You've been, especially a lot of people watching this will be looking at it from the business perspective. You live and breathe that family, business, work life.
It's the whole thing.
Everything
affects everything, and you're spinning a lot of plates. But business is important, but your health is
incredibly
is my number one. Relationships and family, it all goes hand in hand. And obviously there's a priority list, but you've got to take care of all of it.
Yeah,
you do.
Yeah, and it's hard, and that's why we need to be open and be able to talk about when these things, when you're struggling with any particular plate, right, that you think is about to fall down and smash, you want to just give it a little spin.
Give it a little spin,
little
talk about it.
Yeah. Cool. Wicked. And let me know what you thought about this, guys. Let me know down in the comments. Give it a like if you liked the video. Give it a dislike if you disliked the video. Any engagement's good engagement.
Yeah.
And of course, make sure you subscribe with your notifications turned on. That's it. And I think let's end. Do you have a good quote we can end on?
A good quote that we can end on. Now you put me on the spot.
Nah, we'll screw it.
Yeah,
we don't need it.
Just
Do fun stuff and have a good time, right? That's my quote. See you later, everyone.